The next element of effective thinking is to make mistakes and learn from mistakes. Many people try to avoid mistakes, but in fact, mistakes are a great teacher. Mistakes allow you to see exactly what direction you should take by showing you what is defective about the direction that you did take. And to me, this is an example of one of the most powerful lessons that you can embrace. And I wanted to tell you a story about making mistakes that really transformed my whole view of education. It happened during a course I was teaching, very much like the course that you're about to embark on. I was teaching this course and I realized that the real value of this course had to do with whether my students could learn to think better on their own. Not if they learned a little more mathematics because I told it to them, but what could they figure out on their own? Could I make them smarter than they are? Well, an opportunity came up one day when I was trying to explain a concept in the subject of infinity. And by the way, infinity is the topic that we're going to be dealing with in just a few weeks. It's an amazing topic. Well, we were talking about this topic and had come to a rather difficult question. And I decided to ask myself the challenge, could I somehow give my students advice about thinking, but not advice about mathematics, that would allow them to solve this difficult mathematical challenge? Well, we came into class and the challenge was presented, and I posed the question to the students, and I said, okay, it's much too hard for you. You can't solve it on your own, because it was. But I said, go ahead, take 3 minutes and write down something. So they said, well, wait a minute, if we can't do it, what are we supposed to do? I said, just get to work. Don't worry about it, just write down something. So 3 minutes, they grudgingly went ahead and they wrote down things. That was the only rule, is they had to actually make an attempt. After 3 minutes, I pointed to somebody in class, and I just pick people in class. I don't ask for volunteers, so I picked Mary, and I said, Mary, can you tell me what you have? And she said, no. And I said, Mary, just tell me what you have. And she said, no, because she had learned that she did not want to admit ignorance or mistakes. This is something we teach very effectively in school, is to avoid showing that you don't know something. Well, finally she said, okay, I'll tell you, after I insisted. And I wrote down what she had, and then I said, Mary, you're right, it's wrong. And she was pretty mad. She was pretty mad. And so I said, okay, Mary, can you tell me exactly one thing that's wrong with it? And it was a case where it was completely clear what was wrong with it. So she said, yes. And I said, could you fix a little of it? And she said, well, yes, I could make it a little better. And she said, I could just make this little thing a little better. And we'll see this later in the class exactly what I'm talking about. And she said, and I said, okay, then just take 3 minutes and improve as much as you can. After 3 minutes, I went back to Mary again, and I said, and everybody in the class, of course, is working on it as well. I went back to Mary and said, Mary, what do you have now? And she said, oh, I have it. And this time she was enthusiastic because she thought she had it. So she told me what she had, and I wrote it on the board, and I said, do you have it? And she said, yes. And she was very proud, But another student in the class said, oh, Mary, you forgot something. You made a mistake. And he pointed out what the mistake was, and Mary said, shoot, or words to that effect. And after she said that, I said, okay, Mary, can you fix this mistake that this other person had said? And I said, take 2 more minutes and work on it. So she and everybody in the class worked away for 2 more minutes. After 2 minutes, I said, Mary, what do you have? And she had fixed that mistake. And she said, and I said, Mary, that's great. Are you done? And she said, yes. And then some other kid in the class said, oh, wait, you forgot something else. It was another mistake she hadn't noticed. And she said, shoot, again. But then I said, 2 more minutes. She knew how to fix that one in just 2 minutes. And after 4 or 5 attempts of making a mistake, seeing exactly what was wrong and correcting it, she was able to solve this problem. Now, to me, this was an extremely powerful moment for me because I had not told her how to do the mathematics. I had just repeated, make the mistake, specifically what is that mistake, can you correct that mistake, and then do that again and again and again. In a way, I was not necessary for this process. All she had to do is adopt that habit of thinking, and she was able to solve this difficult problem. Now, my honest feeling is, if she had been put in jail and was told you will not be released from jail until you solve that problem, she would be in jail today. She couldn't have done it. And yet, I gave no mathematical hint. And I know I didn't give any mathematical hint because it turned out for this particular question, there's a standard solution. And in fact, it's the standard solution that appears in our own book, The Heart of Mathematics, An Invitation to Effective Thinking. And she did not come up with that solution. Hers was creatively different. So to me, this brought up the power of a strategy of thinking. In this case, making mistakes. Making mistakes, it's liberating because you may not be able to get it right, but you can certainly get it wrong, right? So it's liberating. It gives you something to do when you don't know what to do. And a mistake is directive. It tells you what to do next.